It was a cold and snowy January night. Everyone in our house was occupied with their own activities. I was in the attic room reading a book. My mother was making dinner in the kitchen, and my brother was playing online games with his friends in his room. I usually enjoyed snowy nights, but this one felt different. Suddenly, I heard a loud scraping sound from the attic window. I jumped up and looked outside. In the dim light of the yard lamp, I saw the vague silhouette of someone pressed against the window. They started banging on the glass. Fear gripped me. I barely managed to breathe. I opened the window a crack and heard a faint voice saying, "Help, I'm trapped." It was a woman's voice. The wind and snow were so strong that it was hard to hear her. I opened the window fully and saw her, a young woman with long, dark hair, wearing wet and torn clothes. Her face was red from the cold, and she looked injured. She said she had gotten lost in the woods around our house and was looking for shelter. I brought her inside and told my mother. My mother took her to the kitchen and gave her a cup of hot tea. At that moment, the doorbell rang. My mother told me to watch the woman while she went to answer the door. From the kitchen window, I saw my mother open the door, and two tall men in dark clothes entered the house. They didn't look like police officers. My mother was talking to them, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Suddenly, one of the men raised his hand and showed something that looked like a metal baton. My mother stepped back in fear. I realized that something was wrong. I quickly went upstairs and told my brother to call the police. Then I went back downstairs and tried to help the woman escape through the back door. But before we could do anything, the two men entered the kitchen. One of them came towards me and grabbed my arm. I resisted, but he was much stronger than me. At that moment, the sound of police sirens came from outside. The men quickly left the house and fled before the police arrived. The police came inside, and we told them what had happened. They took the woman to the hospital and began their investigation. A few days later, the police informed us that the two men were burglars and had planned to rob our house. They had used the woman as bait to trick us into opening the door. Thankfully, thanks to my alertness and the timely arrival of the police, they didn't succeed. About 2 years ago, when I was 16, I worked at a small amusement park near Lake Michigan. This incident happened on a cold November afternoon. One of the last days, the park was open before the winter closure. It seemed like just another normal workday, but I was wrong. After clocking in and working at my booth for about 6 hours, I checked my watch. It was 4:40 p.m. My shift ended at 5 p.m. Feeling relieved and exhausted, I started packing up my things. A man in a long leather coat and a fedora approached me. He had a short, neatly trimmed beard, and his clothes looked clean. I thought to myself, just gotta get through this last one. I asked, "Can I help you?" The man stared at me for a few seconds and then, without saying a word, looked around as if he was searching for someone. I felt a little creeped out. I repeated my question, this time with a slightly more serious tone. "Sir, can I help you?" He finally responded, asking in a quiet, almost whispering voice, "What time is it?" I cheerfully replied, "It's almost 5 o'clock." The man nodded and, without another word, started walking towards the main exit of the amusement park. As he walked, he glanced back at me several times. I avoided eye contact, but I had a very uneasy feeling. A little later, my coworker, Mike, who was 19, came to take my place. I grabbed my belongings and practically sprinted through the amusement park to the employee break room to clock out, and then headed to the employee parking lot. I sat on a bench and waited for Mike to give me a ride home. After about 20 minutes, Mike arrived. Before going home, we went to a local pizza place for dinner. At the pizza place, I noticed something strange. The same man I had seen at the amusement park was sitting in a corner of the restaurant, staring directly at me. My heart started beating faster. I told Mike about it, and he shrugged it off, saying, "Probably just a coincidence." "Don't worry, Liam," I said. Yeah, even though I was quite concerned. After dinner, we got back in the car and started the 20-minute drive home. At the second red light we came to, I saw something that made my heart skip another beat. The same man, in an old blue pickup truck, was stopped to our right, and he was definitely looking at me again. I told Mike, and he started to get a little worried too. When we arrived at my street, we drove around the block a couple of times to make sure that the man wasn't following us. Once we were sure no one was there, Mike dropped me off at my house. My mom and sister were out shopping at the mall, and my dad was on a business trip, so I was home alone. As soon as I entered the house, I went to my room and threw myself on the bed. Suddenly, I heard a noise at my window. I slowly got up and looked outside and saw something that will forever send chills down my spine. Right there on my front lawn, The same man was standing, looking directly at my window and smiling. I immediately grabbed my phone and called 911. But once the police arrived, the man was gone. I immediately quit my job at the amusement park after it closed for the winter. I haven't seen the man since this incident. It was an experience I will never forget. I'm currently a freshman in college. I came home this past week for a funeral. But let's backtrack a little. During my senior year in high school, I was in the library during study hall, doing some computer science work on the computer since my laptop at home didn't have Creeper. Anyway, this boy who was in my class sat next to me since those two computers were the only ones with Creeper. He was a really tall, very pale boy. He had long black hair that covered one of his eyes. He wore an anti-flag t-shirt, a ripped jean jacket, and Doc Martens. He never spoke to anyone in class, and I'd never seen him with anyone else. I took a seat, and he looked up at me like I'd committed murder. I quickly looked away and started rummaging through my bag as a distraction. As my head was down, I heard him chuckle and then mumble, "Of course." I froze with my head still down towards my bag. I just dismissed it as him talking to his computer, as code can be quite frustrating. I sat back up and quickly typed in my login details to break the awkwardness. I said, "The teacher assigns too much homework. I can barely keep up." His eyes stayed locked on the computer screen. He said, "You want the answers, don't you?" I left it at that and said, "No thanks. I won't learn anything that way." Usually, I would have said yes, but I didn't want to see his evil stare again. It was like he was staring into my soul. He responded again with that creepy laugh. So creepy that I had to close my eyes and cringe. I opened them and looked over to see him gone. The strange thing was, he left his flash drive. I waited about 10 minutes to see if he would come back, but he didn't. Study hall ended at 1 o'clock, and it was 12:50. I decided I'd take it and give it back to him tomorrow in computer science class. I threw it in a little box above my bed. Gotta admit, it was an awesome flash drive. It was a Swiss Army knife with the flash drive in the middle. Here's the crazy part. After that, he never came to school again. He was notorious for being absent, so for the first month, no one batted an eye. However, May rolled around, and we were all getting ready to graduate. I had completely forgotten about the flash drive until 2 days ago, when I came home. I needed one, and I remembered I still had that boy's. I scanned it with my Norton antivirus, and it said it was all safe. I was planning to delete all his stuff so I could put my PowerPoint for business class on it. Naturally, however, I started snooping through his files. The first thing I saw was a folder named Computer Science. I opened it, and all the answers to every assignment were there. I thought, damn, maybe that's why he left it so I could copy off him. Maybe because he knew he was never coming back. I went back. The second folder was music. I kind of had to open that one to see what he listened to. Surprisingly, not what I expected. There were only 3 songs: Running on Empty by Jackson Browne, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, and Helter Skelter by the Beatles. I went back again. There was an untitled folder. Inside it was a P literature. There were a bunch of essays and various junk. There was one called The Best Doc. I opened it, and it was merely a 10-page document of notebook pages filled entirely with his first and last name, handwritten. I went back again. This is where it gets weird. He had taken pictures of the emergency escape plan posters on the door in every classroom. There was a picture of a lit cigarette on the bathroom floor, and another picture of some coins on the bathroom floor with a yellow post-it note next to it saying, "Chump change," in all caps. Now, this is the really weird part. There was a picture of me taking while reading a book in class. From the looks of it, it was my English class, which he was not in. There was also a document titled, "Rest in Peace to," but it was empty when I opened it. I still have no idea if this was a joke or not. For all I know, he never showed up again because he realized that he lost his hard drive.